like it's letting you.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
What's that crazy noise?
I don't know.
Hi, Marianne Morris. It's the first time I get to see you live. That's nice.
How are you?
No, this is
Wow,
weird.
you
This
look
is,
so radiant. Look at her
yeah,
colors, all
I know.
toned up.
Hey,
Sabine,
Sabine.
so good to see your face. Oh my goodness.
To be here. Liz
Wonderful.
gave me the link, so I thought I would join.
Thank you for joining in. Fantastic.
Yeah,
It's
wonderful.
wonderful to see everybody. Liz, and Joel, Kiana.
Sorry, I'm doing something technical that I wasn't expecting.
That's okay. I can just keep letting
Yeah.
people in. Mhm.
Who is CO?
I don't know.
That might be
CO.
my husband.
That's
Ah,
me.
okay.
Hi,
Okay.
That's
Chastity.
the husband.
Hello. Nice to see your face.
Nice
Thank
to
you,
see you.
husband, for doing all the back work.
He
Thanks.
doesn't do as
Yeah.
much as he used to. I'm doing it all. It's all me.
Uh-oh.
I'm
Uh-oh.
doing the kid work.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's very true. I shouldn't say he's not doing
That's
anything.
important work.
Oh, that sure is. I know.
You've become so
Uh,
savvy, Susan.
yeah. Well, yeah, not as good as what Carl can do. Yeah, but um, where was I? I know we'll have to figure out this recording thing afterwards because I don't know. But
It'll work out.
I know, like I don't know. I thought I set up my Zoom settings all correctly, but I don't know. But so long as Chastity's recording, I guess
No,
it's
I believe I am.
yeah, it says we're recording,
It
but I
says
can't
we're
seem to
recording.
record. I can't seem to record. I don't know. All right. Let's see. What else can we? I know I had this other thing and I turned it off. Dang. Okay. Don't think about it. Okay. As long as you're recording, we have a recording.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. And just for some housekeeping things, this is it's a private meeting in a sense for the live. Like it's for Chastity's group and then our Patreon group. But we do plan to put it out on YouTube. So if anybody objects to that, or you don't want if you want your video off. If you don't want your name to show, just that's just an FYI. But we thought we would kind of keep it more private, but it is available to our free Patreon members as well. But maybe to get started, Chastity can introduce who she is for if it's going out public and people don't know who we are. Chastity can talk a little bit about who she is, and then I'll mention who I am. So go ahead, Chastity.
Thank you, Susan. I'm just a normal person here to learn how to be present in the world. And I don't know, this is an interesting question. Who am I?
Yeah, right.
It's, I don't know, who are we not? It's such an interesting question. And I'm not even sure how to answer that. It might be more along the lines of maybe a way to look at it is what do I have to offer? How do I serve people, or how do I attempt to serve humanity? And really, it's just by being the best version of myself in the moment that I can be. And I've learned through the years since childhood how to hear. I came into this world pretty connected to source, and with that came a lot of interesting energies, and learning how to hear clearly spirit and the difference in the voices. And I'm not schizophrenic, but hear the voices as in like, you can hear people think, you can hear collective consciousness, animals talk, trees talk, beings come in and out of interdimensional spaces, and planets talk, and there's like so many things to put together. And so over the years, or through the years, learned on my own how to discern these energies, and how they speak through people, and where we hold pain in our body, how the mind works, how the heart and mind work together, how the heart blossoms as we grow. And I just have a soft spot in my heart for humanity. Over the years, I've gotten softer myself. It's challenging to live a life in this world. How do we, the big question is, how do we live in this world and not be of this world? How do we not let that harden us, harden our thoughts and harden our hearts? So I don't know. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, yeah. Well, however you feel appropriate, to answer the question, and more will be, I guess, revealed as we have this conversation, answer questions. It's always nice to be able to answer questions, I think, because it brings up unexpected answers that we weren't expecting. And so it's always nice to get specific questions in that way. But I'm Susan, and in the background there is my daughter, Sammie. I thought about, do we go in Sammie's room and do this presentation? We've been doing that in our Patreon meetings now. But, she's still in bed. She's um, usually up at night, in the middle of the night, doing God knows what, at this point. But I mean, some things I can connect the dots in what she's doing, especially if it's particularly intense. But they do a lot of things that we're not aware of. But anyway, I prefer to say beyond verbal, autistic. She has language. Meaning that she can process in the human kind of sense linearly. And she demonstrated that when we did the letterboard several years ago, but then had to stop because the cosmos decided that all the doors were going to be blown open, and we're going to start transmitting all kinds of things. But anyway, so she's beyond verbal. We have a connection that I really wasn't aware of, when she was born. When she was born in 1999, I wasn't all that awake when I was a child, but I would say, sensitive and empathic. I guess I'd shut down a lot of things, but always felt like I don't belong here. This is not my planet, and things are way more complicated here than it really needs to be. Just something inside. I mean, I can name it now, but looking back, but you don't know that when you're growing up. And ever since I was a teenager, I kind of knew I'm here to serve, in a sense. So I have a master's in social services, and I used to work in child welfare, and also did some admin work for county, but that's not really the ticket either. So anyway, I fast tracked in some ways in my awakening since about 2008, 2009. I wasn't always like this, but the doors were blown open in a sense, in 2009-ish, 2010, and was like a remembering, like, oh yeah, I can talk to plants, I can talk to trees, I can hold a rock and get a message from it. I can sense elementals and devas and talk to them, and but things just progressed uh, with Sammie and the intensity of what's been happening. So we have this connection. She's like the out there, and I'm the one that's kind of here in a sense, kind of grounding the information, so to speak. But I think can explain a little bit more with some of the questions that were submitted. So we thought we would start with a couple of questions that were submitted first. So because I think that will help to open up more about Chastity and I, and quote, who are we? Who are we? We're souls having a human experience more and more. We're spirit in matter, and more that's becoming more true than ever. And we're awakening, I think, helping to awaken what it truly means to be human, which is vast and bigger than anybody ever imagined. So with that, maybe we can start with questions. Did you want to ask, post the question that was submitted, Chastity?
You want me to ask the question?
Yeah, because I don't have it in front of me.
You see how
Do you have
organized
it?
we are, Susan? Isn't this lovely?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, this is interesting, and it goes. This was. Let me pull it up. I had it right here, but then you asked, and I set it aside.
Oh, yeah, because I have the other question that's up. Well, you can't see it on my phone, but yeah.
I have it here.
Okay.
So, oh dear, what was that? The question is, it was asking to explain a little bit more about how you, Susan, how do you
Okay.
receive messages? It says, how does, explaining a little bit about how Susan receives messages from other autists, like outside of Sammie. And within that question, it's like you do this whole thing where you do a Ask the Autist Q&A, and you've been posting this. So it's not just Sammie and the parental connection that you have going here. You're going beyond Sam and going out into the autist collective and this mind. And it's really curious because we're not thinking of separate bubbles of mind. So the question is Sammie the mediator for this? Or within this, have you become more receptive, and your intuition and telepathic connections, is it more you and your spirit taking over at this point? Or is there anything here with how you're trusting the messages coming through? How has that changed you? Is it just Sam? And how does this all fit and weave together?
Yeah, that's a good question. Uh, well, the only way I can answer that is from experientially, what I saw, what I experienced, even 8, 9, 10 years ago. So obviously Sammie is my biggest connection, and what I noticed in 2015-ish, 2000, in that time frame, I was getting all these activations, attunements from the cosmos, where I didn't quite know what to do with all that information, where you're just sitting there, you go, okay, you're going to get an attunement, and now you got to sit down, and so okay, receive, so okay, I'm receiving, um, and then it seemed to be what it seems that looking back, it seems that I was being prepared for what I needed to do with Sammie, from like 2017 to this time. So in the beginning, I don't even know if it's the beginning. So the awakening in 2010, right? You're remembering who you kind of really are. It was like, okay, I had these abilities before, was the kind of thing. And, uh, you know, I mean, talking to the stars, Shivos popping in, and, Pleiadians and all these other groups. So it was more, I realized that that's a remembering. It's not something that I needed to do again, but it was a remembering. So then in the 2017 timeframe onward, uh, and this is also from working with others, in a sense. I worked with Susie Miller. I was in energetic synthesis, and these kind of communities. Then you just start to expand your consciousness. So I felt like I was getting taller. Like I could see like stacks of my beingness, going up this way. And then it became more like an internal thing. And then with working with Sammie, then I started expanding out more. So it's an expansion of consciousness, really, what it is, and being in the physical. So that facilitated the connection with Sammie. She was drifting off out into, out there, way out there, going beyond 3060. We're like, okay, now we're in 3060. Now we're at like 4080. We're really going out there, aren't we? And so she was going out. She was traveling in that sense, and I had to be here. Again, this is looking back. You don't know it when you're going through it. The one here to kind of interpret it, anchor it, and I started noticing that if I drew what I was seeing, because there was no way to verbally explain, so that I felt like I need to draw this, and I just started drawing. And then as technology became more sophisticated, and the iPad technology grew, and now there's apps. I use Procreate mostly, that I could draw it, and the information was coming back, and the energy was really intense. And so what I noticed with Sammie is that if I drew it, she would calm down, you know. But then there was the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and sometimes where it just feels like it's just never ending, But so it's just that this is the only thing that I can do right now, come back into your body, because you're out there somewhere. And if I drew it, it should have been like literally. And sometimes, I mean, and I used to have somebody in the house that used to help me. She would watch, and literally, like as soon as I sat down to draw it, she'd be up. She was fine, and then she was walking around again, normal, Sammie. Um, but it was a lot. But in that process, then I just call it light body expansion, because you don't even know what else to call it. It's just going out further and further, connecting to that. And this is the way it came. And now, as far as the autists are concerned, they started showing up in 2017. They were as a collective. And I remember early on in 2017, like January or so, they were talking about we're moving to the next harmonic universe. We're moving to the next harmonic universe. And didn't really know what that meant at that time. So then they wanted me to start doing these lives. So in like June or July 2017, I was doing these lives with people, just a few people. I didn't know what I was talking about. Trying to explain, and they're all on our YouTube channel if you want to go back and watch those early, the planetary synthesis thing. So they start coming in. I see them from different parts of the world. I saw pillars coming down into our universe. It was like, okay, we're preparing to just lift you off. Um, so they were coming in from the beginning and coming in from all over the world. And so, I work mainly with Sammie, but, is Sammie the main one? I don't know. Is she my connection? Because they had me draw this matrix in late 2018 that represents their collective consciousness. I've shared it in different places. People may not realize what it means, but it means literally their collective consciousness, their vast consciousness. And as a way, and it literally looks like a star, this 18-pointed star, but that was like a matrix created. I don't know where you would say, but it was created for them to connect to so that they don't, quote, embody here the way we do, where we are, but it keeps them as a collective consciousness, and are they all part of this collective if they're autistic? No, and it's not to sound like they're exclusive in a sense, but they operate in various levels, in the physical human form. But we could say what I've seen recently is that the creatrix, the mother, let's say, right, the creatrix created this matrix for this autist collective to connect into. So can I connect? Can I talk to any of them? I'm assuming I can, but I don't. I feel like there's a sacred relationship between that child and the parent that sometimes they just pop in. Especially when I'm answering those Ask the Autist questions, I'll just see one come in. Okay, so this one wants to answer the question. I don't go out there searching. Some of them are from Sammie. Obviously, some of them I don't know. Some of them are truly from that collective. But yeah, we're as far as myself as a soul consciousness, it is like we're blended together in a way because I know the creatrix that created that. It feels like I can, like I'm part of that creatrix that created it. That this collective consciousness. So um and I've noticed, sometimes if parents ask questions or something, sometimes then I have to, because that human expression that's here is also a different, they're physically here to carry a different kind of energy. So sometimes in order to communicate with them, I have to adjust my energy. I can feel them in my brainstem, and then I answer the question. But it is like now like a blended kind of experience where I can physically, experience it. And then sometimes my mind wants to override, some of the things that they're saying, like, okay, like, I don't know, it doesn't make sense. And they'll say, no, you have to use that specific word that I just told you, you can't change that word. Um, there's a meaning in it. So, and now it's become where I just type, sometimes I'll go back and, where it's a confusing sentence or something, but I just literally type. So to take out as much of the filter of the human mind that I can, you know. But again, that relationship between the parent and the child is sacred. I don't cross that barrier unless somebody asks me specifically. I don't go fishing around and trying to see what is going on with each individual child and their family, because especially the mother and the child bond is very sacred. You know, there's a reason why that child came in with that parent, and you know, we carry those genes, right? Their genetics is imprinted into our bodies, into our womb when we birth them. Right? And I think I've heard that it even travels through our bloodstream. You know, so um, uh, you know, I don't pretend to know all the answers and what everybody's going through in each family. You know, they're triggering something for that family or that the growth of the parents. You know, whatever it is. So that's like a sacred relationship. I feel like, you know, I can talk in generalities, but
Liz is saying, so they function more like a collective mind than we do individually. Yeah.
um, uh, in some ways, yes, but they're also showing us that we actually act as a collective as well on the planet. There's no way to get around that, you know, because we're manifesting a certain consciousness on the planet as a humanity, right? And being living in lack, living in fear, you know, those belief systems, that's all embedded here. So they didn't want to connect to that collective as a humanity. They are human. So I'm not saying that they're not human, but they weren't going to connect to the collective consciousness, because otherwise then we would continue in the same boat. Nothing would change if we didn't if there wasn't something else reflecting to us in a sense that this is really not the way it is. You know, and they remain connected to, you know, God's source, creator, whatever word you wanna use, and so they're reflecting that to us, to the collective human consciousness. You know, they're mirrors for us in our daily lives, but also then they're mirrors in that higher dimensional way. And what I've gotten is that it's because we don't know how to act like a collective consciousness. So they're mirroring, by being a collective consciousness, what it means to act like a collective consciousness, even though it may not look like it in the, you know, in the world out there. But anyway, I hope that helps.
Thank you. Thank you. I think there's a lot of layers to consciousnesses that can be, you know, you use the term like not embodied or embodied. I think that's really curious, because I see embodiment as the embodiment of the spirit self and how that manifests in the physical. So yeah, sometimes I look at this little, like these collective bubbles as traps or consciousness traps, in order to assist with the with stopping the planetary ascension process. So, you know, the whole point of, you know, loving Mother Earth and understanding the creatrix and is about a specific kind of embodiment in the human body, in the human form, remembering how to open portals and gateways, and remembering what it is to not be in this kind of like playground or learning field. So to me, it's really interesting. I feel like I can look at that two ways. Like, one of them is there's a collective that you've so beautifully drawn. If you guys haven't seen her picture, it's really fantastic. I'd love to see an upgraded version of that, because I see the colors in it changing quite significantly. But it's almost like there's a preservation of these beings who were in some ways forced or trapped to not be able to embody, to assist with the ascension in that way. I heard you say two things. One is they can't embody, and in another one, mother created a, a star, if you will, or a bubble in order to assist with humanity's embodiment. So I heard two different. It's almost like a bypass, or like a mother
Yeah.
created this because you were supposed to embody, you didn't, and so now how can we save this soul group that was unable to participate in the way that we needed for planetary ascension. So it's kind of like, we outsmart them again, in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. You mean like the fallen the the humans or whatever
The fallen
propagating.
consciousness. If you just look
Yeah.
at it as if we
Yeah.
just simply looked at it as a fallen consciousness,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how we bring that consciousness then back up into a different vibration, or a new octave is really
Yeah.
fascinating. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's if I start to look back, it makes more sense in a sense. I get, like I said, and it's curious to think about now where we are, and they're embodying in a different way, but we're also all embodying in a different way. You know, we have to, and then it begs the question: was I ever even really embodied? Because I never really bought in. You know what I mean? Like I didn't feel like I belonged here, and so I think I've heard a lot of other kind of people who are awakened or spiritual people, right? They describe a similar thing, like this is not my planet. I don't belong here. And so for people who are spiritual, uh, we had tended to have an issue with, let's say, being poor or having trouble manifesting money and things like that in this world that's, not really built for, kind of built for us, So were we ever really embodied? And there's different levels of embodiment, you know?
And different ways of looking at loving the planet, and the longing to be somewhere is just, I think, realizing or remembering that you're not really from here. Some beings just aren't from here, but and of course there's a whole link to that. Some people are sent here, some are choose to be here, some don't understand why they're here because of the not remembering and that kind of thing. So interesting.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we have a question coming up. Joel?
Yeah.
Hey, Susan. Joel here. The collective on the nonverbal autistics, I think you call them. So what do you feel is the overall mission, if there is one? What's the larger picture here of what you feel that
They're doing?
yeah, well, that they want to do. Obviously, they're putting the pieces in place is what I hear, um, and I think it's wonderful. I feel that as well. So, what do you think? Is there a bigger mission or purpose? Do you feel?
Yeah, definitely. Um, uh, Boy, there's many layers as you were, asking the question to this. So I can feel Sammie coming in. I can actually feel her right now at that temporal bone behind the ear. And I just mention it. I'm just mentioning that because one of the things that's happening is all our senses are also awakening to its multidimensionality. Like we think of our five senses as being just, kind of certain things that helps us to smell or taste, but there's a multidimensional quality to all our senses. And those are going to undergo an upgrade because, as for some of you who may not know, the autistics, they have a different sensory system. They are much more sensitive, you know, and their level of sensitivity is going to vary, you know, amongst them. Let's say, meaning that some of them who are verbal or more quote functional to the ones the more extreme, like Sammie, you know, that we might call more dysfunctional, and that means like in the physical requiring more assistance, you know, for daily care kinds of things, you know, because they're too absent or become distracted. So I just want to put that out for people who may not kind of be aware of that, and also for parents who have children who may be listening who have children who are in that quote end, you know, in that range of how sensitive they are. So, and Sammie once told me, she said, I process information using my omnipresence to totally align to source. And she spelled that on the letterboard, and I was like, you know, like what in the world does that mean? You know, right? But so it's her sensory system. Her sensory system is her communication links to God, to source. That's how she communicates. So anyway, so I'm noticing that my different senses are becoming more sensitive. So this is something new where, for me, where although you can kind of hear or interpret things, but to feel it on the temporal bone now, you know, resonating what she's saying. So anyway, what I was getting is that, okay, so one of the things that they're here to do is awaken our genetics, you know, for that quote telepathic ability, which is supposed to be part of our genetics, you know. And some of you may remember that I mentioned that Sasquatch, you know, a couple of years ago, he was like, you know, showing me, yeah, you're all supposed to be telepathic. It's on the first chromosome, and look here at the bottom, there's a section where it's like it was just dark, you know. So those genes, what we might call junk DNA, why are they junk? You know, maybe they're supposed to be integrated, and that's part of the so energetically they're kind of awakening those kinds of things. The other interesting thing that's been coming up in the last few months is right, they look for the mutated genes that is associated with autism, right? That if they have these mutations, then they're more likely to be autistic, right? Now Sammie, you know, she's not going to answer, but you know, put the question out, like maybe they have the correct genes. What if their genes are the correct ones, and we're trying to fix them, but they're really because if you fixed it, maybe it would become disassembled again, right, in the genetic template. So, you know, just things to think about. So there's that aspect, the genetic healing. The other one is like crown chakra, because it really hasn't been functioning properly. So the crown, what we've been working with lately is the crown and the skull bone, the skull there, and your 12 cranial nerves that are there, which is essential for which is our sensory system, right? And how it's wired through the brain to go down to the brainstem. It extends out into the physical body, and that's our sensory system, and how we process information through our sensory system. So that's going on. So the crown chakra then also, if you imagine that the skull is a resonator, which I'm sure most of you listening, right, know that it's a resonator, and communicates with the stars. You know, not just through like, okay, like you're channeling, but literally like feeling the sounds from the star system, whichever ones that you're connected to. And then imagine that that resonates through your bones, okay? And it doesn't have to be translated into words. It's like a knowing, right? Because it's literally vibrating in your body. And then look at your feet, the feet bones, and it's in communication with the earth and the crystals, right, of the earth, the other crystalline beings of the earth, of the planet. So there's a correction of the crown chakra that they're interested in doing as well, for their own physical bodies too, because they still had to be connected to a body that was a physical 3D human, you know? And so now they're undergoing physical changes in their own way, in order to embody that soul the way we're trying to do now going forward. So there's that piece. And then the other piece that was significant, and I was shown this in 2017, is that, their collective consciousness and the human collective consciousness at some point are going to merge. And then that becomes like the new collective consciousness of humanity. Now, in 2017, I thought it was happening right away, because you think, okay, I see it so clearly. And well, our first logo or whatever was something like whole plus whole equals creation. So it's literally like fusion, like in physics, the idea of fusion. When two atoms are joined together, it becomes a different element. So it was very much like that, like this collective consciousness and then the human collective consciousness are going to merge into become something different. So now I'm getting that it's probably closer to like 2040-ish. And because there's a lot more people that need to be, quote, awakened, or, there still isn't that many people. I thought by now, like we'd all be much more, quote, awake, but, that hasn't, quote, we still got a ways to go for a lot of other people. And that's okay. I used to be really frustrated with that. But now it's like, okay, I'm just here to do my business and my part, and whatever anybody else is doing, it's their part, and without stressing about it, because now there's just so many changes that we can't avoid it. Oh, the other thing is it's the linear logic that the way we're used to thinking. So they have a whole brain. They're operating more from whole brain. And if you think about it, when you look at the diagnosis of autism and how they explain it to you when your child is like, especially if you diagnose it like, 1, 2, 3 years old, they'll tell you like, okay, we're supposed to be, as we grow from a baby, we're supposed to be pruning neural connections. Well, they don't prune their connections. And why is that? And why are we pruning neural connections? Like, is that, and they say that we only use 10% of our brain. And you go, okay, now does those two things really make sense then? Should we really be pruning? So they're interested in whole brain functioning. And we have to get out of linear thinking, because that keeps us looping and recreating the same things over and over again. So they have a different way of processing. And there's even, like Sammie has shown, new brain waves, because even everybody talks about the alpha brain wave. It's your awake state, and everybody's trying to do these things, with the alpha brain waves. And it's like, they already know, let's say the fallen ones, right? The lower consciousness ones, they already know how our brains function. And don't you think that they know exactly how to ride those waves of the alpha waves and thought patterns and mind control that can ride those alpha waves? Just a thought. So anyway,
That reminds me, when you're talking about the temporal bone, this is where we hear information. So it makes perfect sense. And there's a whole geometry here behind the left ear, actually, that
the left ear.
Convoluted. And I mean, it can be, this is where we would see if like something is interfered with, you could see a black goo there. But it's also how I see and like the entry point in a way to V2K or voice to school technology, being able to hear things that other worldly beings or what it is they want to put into the minds of people. And I'm not sure, is the dodecahedron connected to air, the element of air? I can't remember.
The dodecahedron is ether.
Ether. So that
Yeah.
makes more sense. So it's, yes, in a sense, right? So it's like if they have a distorted, or they come through the dodecahedron. So if that is, if they're coming through the ethers, which is where telepathy would come from, yeah, and they distort that, then you would, you could be separated then from, if they can distort that, you would be separated from your
True voice.
from your true voice, because anyway, it's just my thought. And then when you were talking about alpha waves, or you were talking about a whole plus whole equals whatever your thing was, and then I thought of cold fusion. This merging creates a kind of cold fusion or clean energy, which I suppose is still hypothesized, but there's something here that might have something to do with the conversations we have in the ethers, and why they separate us from spirit, or why it's so challenging to get that here. So anyway,
Oh, for sure. I mean, just a lot of distortion that we've been under. Trying to get ourselves out of it, in a sense.
It also is curious to me how husband and wife, or and child, because we talk so much about the mother and child bond, and so much so the father is left out of it. But there, how do we bring in the communication then with fathers and their children also have a telepathic communion? And is that different for fathers? I'm not a father. I don't have a different kind of sense, but also the carrier of the baby is the carrier of both genetic strength. And so the mother ultimately has this really strange soup of creation that stays inside her body. So I think that's really interesting, how unique it is that when you, for lack of a better term, mate with somebody, the connection is really designed to be more than what it is today. It's so much bigger than what it is today. And there's just so many things. This has opened up so many layers of ways to communicate, and how do we communicate? And
and what do we mean by telepathy? I mean, that's going to change a lot, I feel like, and energetic communication, I prefer to call it energetic communication, really. But the telepathy, as a lot of has become the popular kind of in thing.
It's so trendy now.
it's so trendy, and it's good, but also like there's like
dangerous too.
And there's
Maybe-
misunderstandings around it,
Yeah.
and but anyway, that's a whole nother topic from
All right. Any more
Jim.
questions? Any more questions coming up? I know you have another one written in, Susan, I think.
Yeah, somebody submitted. Should we go to that one? This one's pretty cosmic.
Yeah.
I'll let you try to answer this one.
Oh gosh.
He says, I would like to ask whether the planets and stars are celestial beings, or what mythology refers to gods and goddesses. If so, did something occur where the planets were at war and Earth was moved or changed from her original state? That's a really good question, huh?
That's a really good
So,
question. Yes, they're cosmic beings. Planets and stars
definitely.
are cosmic beings. There's no doubt about that. The way they communicate with us, but we are the stars. We're each one of the. How I see it is we have a coordinates that we come in with. What star system did we come through? And that seems to be the star map in our body. I think, Susan, you and I were looking at this before, where the exit point is going to be different than the entry point. And so your cosmic body star map changes. And so this is when we feel fascia pulling, right? We have pains in the body because we need to go in this cosmic cycle. And we tend to keep ourselves trapped in a cycle where the sun's not actually moving. And we are actually moving through this celestial space. And the planets very much connect. I see in session work all the time, their coordinates is off. The coordinates is off. What the frick does that mean? What does that mean, the coordinates is off? Well, look at your body map. Where are you in the stars? You might be living technically in the past, which could have been 2 days ago. This planets, the way they transit and enter. I'm not an astrologist, or I don't do any of that kind of stuff. So when I hear it, I take it seriously. I'm like, oh, this must really mean something. So, there's kind of like a whole scam on keeping us into a specific form, a specific mold. And it's so important to move out of that, because yes, the planets are celestial beings and very much alive and really help with our ascension. And we ascend and they ascend. I don't know how to answer the next part in terms of the what group. I think it's something came up with the gods and goddesses. When I hear that, of course, I think of Greek mythology, and these beings aren't mythological in my opinion or in my experience. Or perhaps the imagination is mythological. I think there's different ways to look at that too. But these gods and goddesses are much like the consciousness you're speaking about. They're groups of consciousness, and we've experienced that consciousness. And I think this is where we get like, I was Athena in such and such time. No, you weren't, but you probably were around during that time, and so you feel that consciousness moving through your body. And or your mind, or a piece or an expression comes through. And it's really exciting to investigate within yourself. What does that feel like? What does it look like? And sometimes that brings pain. And this is where we get the concept of war. War is really polarity. It feels like a separation of self from self. And we can look at it as in war, as we see it on the outside, manifesting in terrible ways that we witness it. But when there's an inner peace, there's always an inner peace, and never truly an outer war. I don't know why I'm saying it like that, but there it is, because it actually goes. I'm actually fighting to not say that. Because I'm like, that's not how it is. And I can't, I'm just trying to allow myself to free talk. And so there's this illusion of what war really is. There are falls of consciousness, and those can feel like evolutionary wars. There are, unfortunately, I think, factions of beings and people that, but again, to me, it's just like, I don't know, there's something just about really being embodied and one with yourself, that even the outside wars or the concept of this just is, maybe it doesn't touch you the same. There's
Mm-hmm.
something here. I'm kind of feel, Sam showing me something, but I can't quite hear her. So
Mm.
she always
Okay.
makes me burp when, so
She's
pardon.
around.
Yeah, she comes in. I see this beautiful buttery yellow, and
Oh.
I was like, she wears this yellow gown. I think I've said that before, but
Mm.
that's how she comes through to me.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and then I don't know. That's my short answer for that
Mm-hmm.
question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they definitely are alive in the sense of they're conscious, and I guess it's hard for us to imagine that here because we've been trained only to see that dense matter form, especially planets, but even like a star or galaxies, um, I'm starting to look at it like um, from, let's say, the primordial waters where it's this, there's just no form, um, and then how does source, let's say, begin to create aspects of itself. That's a kind of a limited word, but and then I just started seeing like spinning, in this movement, that's awakening. And so you see it spiraling and spinning, and then it's like what comes up is an aspect of its consciousness, but it's really like this is even a galaxy, you know. That's come to life in a sense, and maybe not the life that we think of it as, um, but as an expression. And so that core essence of consciousness, we may be calling a god or a goddess, um, energetically in a sense. And, you know, the human as an expression of source is just vast, it's big, it's huge. And so, um, this is just a kind of a more of my contemplating, but is what we're talking about really like expressions of the human soul in its true vastness that it is, and it's like an evolution of birthing. I don't know if that's the right word, but birthing these bigger and bigger beings that then is that creates stars and creates planets, because really they were creators to begin with, bringing in that essence of being a creator, like the creator. And so we have that impulse to want to create, and co-create. So I'm kind of seeing that these are perhaps what we refer to as goddess and goddess, gods and goddesses. And right now I don't know why, but the question's coming, and again, this is for all of us, I think, just to contemplate um, what we mean by a god, which is quote masculine, and then goddess as feminine. So like more like the goddess of the primordial kind of mother womb kind of energy, and then the god aspect, like, right, it's that we say that masculine aspect is what gives us movement, you know, and so it's the two and how they, I don't know, spin that vortex.
Mhm.
Um, that then emerges into a galaxy, what we would call galaxies. So then that we would call that a God aspect. You know,
I see the
perhaps.
gods. I see the gods and goddesses actually as one. They always have a counterpart, and we hear about
Mm-hmm.
them as separate counterparts, but I think they're actually one. And
Mm-hmm.
so, um, yeah, I think there's like a kind of a misconception of how we see gods and goddesses as well. And they might express to you as feminine when you're working with a feminine aspect of self, or they may come in expression as masculine if you're working with an electrical spin point, for instance. So I think depending on how, what it is you're working on in your consciousness, or what it is you're balancing, or what's coming through you, is how they're going to present if you're talking to, or praying to, or working with these big energies. While you're talking, I was
Yeah.
thinking of Horton Hears a Who, you know, when there's an entire planet like on the top of a flower, or in Men in Black,
Yeah.
opens up the locker and they think he's a god, right? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
all these universes inside universes. And if you could see what is around you right now, I mean, I think you'd be petrified. I think it would
Mm.
be the scariest things that you've ever seen in all of your life. And you would shut your eyes and never want to open them again, right? Because there's so much happening.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you want to see all of that stuff, but it could be very shocking, and it's surprising and overwhelming at first, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's sometimes what it's like when you're learning how to travel into the ethers and cross-pollinate your consciousness with other beings. So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, that's part of what this shift of reality, let's just call it shift of reality,
Mhm.
is gaining a new perception and new ways of looking at these concepts that we've had, that we've been taught. Um, so, and I think part of our conversation is what you just said is kind of touching on that, Um, there's a little boy yesterday, that I did that message from about Three Eye Atlas, um, and he says something like uh, about Three Eye Atlas, that it comes from this supernova explosion, and I put those creation codes in it, and you go, okay, that sounds really audacious and kind of arrogant in this current language, that we have. But um, uh, he showed me an aspect of himself um, when he's describing like these intergalactic beings that are kind of creators, and he said you might call these gods, um, but I could feel. I saw these like big, vast beings. I mean, they're. I just, you just know that they're really um, huge, and they're in between galaxies, you know. And so he's like, well, I'm one of those, beings. Um, uh, let's say that's closer, if you want to look at it as timelines, um, to the original. So we could say, in the timeline sense, it's closer to that individual, because the feeling that I get is that the universe has been evolving, you know, and so in this evolution of the universe, then there are these vast beings, and some of them are Lyran, the original, creators. They were like, you know, again, closer to the original creation, but they're vast. They look vast to us. And then, we're getting, I wouldn't say smaller, let's say getting more refined, you know? And that right now, even like, okay, if we looked at it that way, then as this human, I'm an expression of source in a much more refined way, you know, that could have this body and this experience, which brings this macro and the micro together in a way that we haven't really understood before, you know. And that way we're this body and we feel like we're this little thing, but really we're layers and layers and layers of these vast beings that became more refined in this micro version, if you want to call it that, you know. So
We
yeah,
have,
interesting.
yeah,
Go
thank
ahead.
you. We have another question from
Okay.
one of the people in the group here. So, if all disease is occurring in the mind, is the same true for the pain or discomforts in the physical body? And there might be another comment after this. So,
It's a good question.
mhm.
Is it all in the mind?
Oh, pick me. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say something, but yeah, go ahead.
No,
No,
go.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go. No.
I just,
Well, go ahead.
yeah, go. She's going to continue. She's still writing, so you start answering.
Oh, okay. I feel like I've been yakking too much. So, but okay. Well, it's in the 3D mind. I would say no, that disease is not always in the mind, as in like the mental thinking, because in the 3D body, it hasn't been enough to just repeat something in our minds, you know, and have things completely vanish, you know. And so that would depend on even the person as well, because I feel like there's an aspect of your body that has to know it too. And maybe you can program it, or people have been able to program it from their mind to get through the body, to manifest the healing of that. But then if we look at, you know, our genetics, it's not functioning optimally. We have junk DNA, and these other things. And what's coming up right now too is even there are people that experience that kind of healing. But what's the bandwidth dimensionally? Like, you know, we've kind of been distorted to operate like a 10D human, really, at the most. Thinking of like the 10D grid, right? And from that perspective, that people will experience healing, but it's within a certain bandwidth of what we've known and how we've functioned. But now, if we open all that up, what does that really mean? So maybe it depends on the person too, that the disease is all in the mind, and how open and awake you are. And some people may need to go through that process of the cold disease. We're denser, and so things stay stuck in the bodies, and hard to free that up until now. What I see is like the quantum field, the way it's opened up, and you know, there's literally like fissures, cracks, in the physical body. And is that the pain of the fascia? You know, is that some of the pain that things are trying to break open? A lot of things to think about. Okay, go ahead, Chastity.
Yeah. Well, she also added, you mentioned body map adjustments, and how might we make these coordinates adjustments to align better. from being a body worker, I understand that if you've ignored pain in perhaps it's the soul body, but oftentimes the soul is separated from the spirit. And I see the soul as a vehicle to assist with spirit connection and physical body connection. And the soul has vast experiences, vast personalities, like threads or wheels of experiences. And this is the wheel that we turn on, past, present, future, is kind of the soul's way of, the spirit says, I think that's a really good idea. I'm going to drop that in, and that's going to create a spoke off this way. Spirit says that's a good. So that's, you know, kind of my super basic way of seeing this. So there is, when the soul or a personality or the dimensional expression of self is in pain, it could be another type of disease. It could be a disease of the mind. It could be a disease of the body. It could be something that was so, you know, people talk about emotional pain that is so tremendous that they just can't get over it, you know, and they're constantly grieving. And they also carry larger portions, for instance, or don't know how to release a planetary trauma. So we kind of come in with an imprint of the wars, the economic status, these kinds of things from birth all the way through. So we carry those in the soul imprint, which manifest in the body. So why do I know it this way? I see it this way. When I started touching people with my hands, I started saying, what in the frick? What in the frick? Put my hands off, take them off, put them down, what was that, right? So the body tells a story. And I've always heard from my higher self and my connection to source and other healing beings that I work with, that when we've ignored something in the energetic form, the soul or spirit, when we've ignored it, it will manifest in the physical body. And it might not just be what you experienced in this now self. It could be other selves, other expressions of the soul. It can be future selves. So there's this really interesting piece to it. And so once it's hit the body, it's like your higher self saying, you haven't integrated this, you're ignoring it, you're ignoring it, you're ignoring it. And because so many people don't understand we have a biofield and that we're this massive multi-dimensional being, we're almost told that we're not. And if we're not told that, it at least never comes up in conversation, right? So as we move through learning these things, if we're not healing something if we're not healing it, then I see it as your spirit, it's not a punishment, says it's going to sit right here. If you're not seeing it here, then it's going to sit right here in the physical body where you're going to actually feel it. And if you feel it, well, then maybe you're going to do something about it. Sometimes when that physical pain has happened for a while, unfortunately, these bodies, they can only take so much, right? So there can be partial permanent damage. And so it's from that partial permanent damage that you will have to work from. But that being said, I also hear, or the way I understand it, is that we can heal ourselves from anything and that it's possible.
Yeah.
I believe we have been able to do that. And I believe we'll be able to do it again. And so there's a disconnect in the belief system of that. And where in your field where in your existence do you think that you can't overcome this?
Yeah, that's one of the key questions.
Yeah, it's probably somewhere. And you may very well, we see this a lot in like persecution wounds. We don't want to bring forth who we truly are, for we may be looked at like we have three heads, or something. And so learning to kind of come out of this, some of these darker ages, and remembering again who we are, is important. But yeah, I think that the mind specifically plays light tricks on us, and we feel like we're stuck or can't get out of it. And this is, Steiner talks about Lucifer and Ahriman and these two polarities being balanced. If we go too far, one or the other, one is spiritual bypassing, and one is a sclerosis or a hardening into transhumanism. So what is it to be human? And how do we move into the body map adjustments? I think I think that we'll be going into understanding the stars better, understanding the big beings that Susan talks about, and the consciousnesses that are still attached to these big beings, and understanding in between time, understanding parallel time, understanding really what time is, and reconnecting with the time beings and the time spirits, I think is going to be really important. And just simply setting intentions, or trusting the knowing that is waking up inside of you, is going to be part of how you make those coordinate adjustments. Being on a place on the planet, which is not easy, and not everybody gets to do this, but going where you're called, living where you're called, visiting where you're called. And if you can't travel, then remember you're a time traveler regardless, and it's through the imagination that we do this. And so, we're learning how to bilocate again is part of that gift that we have of telepathy as well. These things are waking back up. And so, some of us are kind of blazing the path and testing it out, testing the waters, so to speak. What does this look like? What does this feel like? Look, I did it. You can do it too. So it's, yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot to contemplate, I feel like we're, Chastity and I can talk, but ultimately it's up to each person too, we can offer some thoughts. And I think energetically, just all being together and somebody asking the question, we're kind of exchanging energetic information in a sense, that gives us a different kind of insight, and that's what's always been fun, with Chastity and I talking and getting together. I've been doing it more in the background for the last probably 2-3 years, and just so many epiphanies that happen just being together in our energy fields, kind of collaborating beyond what we say. And so that's one of the reasons why, we started that podcast kind of just random, like, okay, let's see how far this goes. Yeah. Let's see how many episodes we can do, So we're just still winging it in a sense, but just going with the flow, which is part of the new way of living. Do we have to plan? Yeah, it's still have to do some planning. We're not completely out of this kind of time construct at this time, but then again, if we didn't have some of that, some structure, we couldn't be here. We couldn't have a forum. We couldn't have some kind of organization, because even the universe has a law of structure, right? I mean, and there's a reason for that, because otherwise we would just kind of just we'd just be liquid and bleeding into everything else. And
Like in Tombstone, when Wyatt Earp said, we got to have some law.
oh, yeah. That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. So there's some parameters, but no hard quote answers in a sense. But again, just I think being in the field, everyone being in the field together, and those of you listening, to the recordings, just the energy will kind of awaken you, and this is how we expand our consciousness. This is why we join and quote certain groups, that you work with. Why you might work with other people that have a session with, because they can see something, another aspect there that they may not be aware of. Anyway, along those lines, I just want to mention about the autistics as well. Like, so now we have this group called the spellers because they, now we have them as spellers, the non-spellers, the speakers, the non-speakers, I don't know, the beyond verbal, and I see them as doing a specific mission, the spellers, let's say, to quote, prove to people who might need proof in a sense. And they're spelling things, and they may not be aware of these other multidimensional, higher dimensional aspects of themselves that they're bringing in, but they do have that aspect. Just like we're not always aware of our multidimensional selves and other vast aspects of ourselves, and that's why when you meet with somebody like Chastity and things, you can, they can see that other aspect of you and bring forward, a bit more clarity and things. So, just to put that out, that just to say, like, what they're spelling from what they can physically in their physical bodies, have access to. But the full multidimensionality, it's still a range that they may not be tapped into. Well, I don't want to say they're not tapped into, but that in the physical body, we're still operating in a certain density. Just to say that, but
Would you say, Susan, while you're talking, a couple of questions were coming up. I don't know if I'm hearing, maybe it's a question one of the future watchers will have. But as parents, we are stewards of our children's spiritual evolution. And so there's a different level of teaching when you're kind of seeing, it's interesting to me because I see beyond verbal as almost being the ones who are teaching their parents. And so like teaching their parents how to be connected. And so it's almost like they're an overarching light for the parents and opening this connection. Whereas when language gets in the way, then there's a different, it's a different paradigm. But anyhow, how am I asking this? Like how, what is the parent's responsibility to steward their children? I see more vulnerability when a child is nonverbal, in the sense that there's more interference in the ethereal realms or in the multidimensional realms. I've seen people claim that they're talking to the autist collective. And would maybe say that doesn't feel true to me. You know, in some instances, in some videos that I've seen, and some children are actually tortured, and you get this even like any kind of child maybe has night terrors, and you know, these are things coming in through multidimensional realms. So I'm trying to find the exact question I'm asking, but how do you steward your children spiritually? How do you protect your children and spiritually, or is it part of part of a a mission that this collective has to protect or awaken their children?
Yeah, those are really good questions. I mean, I would say they're definitely here to awaken the parents first, you know, because I realize now that my awakening was important in the beginning to before, you know, it could really be more public in a sense, you know. So definitely that aspect is they're definitely here to awaken a lot of the parents. And the other part about, yeah, stewarding the kids, I mean, there's a very fine line in that. Like, you know, I can't control what Sammie does in the multidimensional realms, let's say, you know, and what she's doing, who she's working with, you know, I'm only seeing fractions of what she totally experiences. You know, you can't. I'm not in her body, you know, in that sense. So I'm getting glimpses, you know. Let's say I can't control that, but I can control who I choose to, let's say, work with, you know, to do. I have to. I can choose who I'm going to work with in the physical, you know, who I take them to, let's say, or who I'm going to allow to have telepathic communication with her or be part of a group and things, you know. So um, that part, if you're going to, I feel like if you're, you know, taking them somewhere to somebody for somebody to work on them or somebody to, you know, like energy work or things like that, that you have control over that because that that person's energy field may have a lot of astral leaks, um, leaks in their auric field, you know, those kinds of things. So I think you have to really sit with yourself as a parent to ask, is this the right person, and see how you feel about this person, you know, throughout your whole body, you know, and see, you know. And I haven't always listened either, where I'll, you know, mentally override something that really didn't feel right, you know. And but boy, I know recently Sammie made it known very clearly that there was someone that she wasn't going to work with, not in any shape or form. So it was that was very clear, and meaning for parents who may not know behaviors. She was yelling, hitting herself for like a week, trying to get her message through, and you know, I kind of had the sense of what was going on, but then mentally, I'm like, okay, how do I work around this? And it became very clear that she wasn't gonna. There was no workaround, and I knew there was a part of me. I was like, okay, and I was ignoring it. So, uh, you know, just to say that any of us can make mistakes in that sense, and that if they're quote nonverbal or beyond verbal, they speak through their behaviors as well, which can be confounding because with them, they're so sensitive. You don't know if it's they felt an asteroid hit something, somewhere, or, I mean, it's like, okay, what happened now? Where and what dimension was it in? But that could be one indication that there's something going on with somebody that you might be working with that that you can stop. But yeah, their own spiritual growth. I mean, we tend to think that, oh, well, they're already spiritually advanced, so they don't need, quote, education in a sense, or I don't know if that's the right word, but and they may be connected to beings or, quote, gods and goddesses that they talk about, again, like in this multidimensionalness of time, even of simultaneous. Then we're all sort of like my remembering of these Hindu gods. It could be a remembering, rather than something that we're supposed to progress with, I mean, I don't know. I kind of feel like everything that we've known has to kind of be cleared out for really the new. And there might be nuggets of truth, of core essence truth that we're taking with us. But I feel like I don't know that we should be teaching those things again. Exactly. That's my opinion. I don't want, I don't know. But
Thank you.
I know a lot of people are going to have feelings about that. But yeah, what do you think? What do you feel?
What do I think and what do I feel?
Yeah,
That's
I meant to say what.
squishy. I don't know. Gosh. I think that, just to sum it up, a bunch of information coming in, but I kind of want to put it in plain, as plain, simple terms as possible. And I think it goes to unlearning what it is we learned, and trusting this new phase that we're moving into, meaning as your body changes, as your awareness changes, trust that more information is going to be opened, that we know who we are. And as we know who we are, then it's almost as if less energy needs to be put on shielding, guarding, protecting, because when you step more into who you are, it already shifts, the geometry is already shifted. Yeah. It's like who you are becomes your protection, so to speak.
Yep.
And when my children were younger, I would bring them into my field, kind of scoop them into my field, and always checked their spine, checked their brain stem, checked the corpus callosum, what information is crossing through. So would go through, that whole process. And still today, my children let me, work on them and see like what's going on. I still ask, but for the most part, I have pretty open permission for that. But it's the knowledge of who you are, and it's the knowledge of where we're headed, who we are and what we are. And the Melchizedeks say, I know who I am in truth, I know what I am in truth, I know how I serve in truth. Then there's, more mantras to go with that as you grow in awareness. But I think that's the base piece. And I almost see that the verbal and nonverbal as like a vortex, almost like a spinning sands of time. I don't know how to explain what it is I'm seeing right here, but there's it's representing as an exchange of awareness. So I think that the body is just becoming, coming into awaken into who we are. Kelly and Mick or Mike, I don't know if I said it right. The
Nick,
beauty,
yeah.
Nick, thank you. The beauty in those experiences that we perceive as negative can be a springboard for our own healing, as well as strengthening a muscle that was atrophied in some way, shape, or form.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Because we're all, learning, and growing. When you can see it, when that awareness comes, then it's definitely a healing that goes on right in the awareness of it, that takes place.
The
The other
awareness is
piece,
the alchemization.
yeah,
It's like it
that's a really good.
immediately alchemizes.
That's a really good point, and it seems like it's a more immediate now,
Mm-hmm.
than ever before. Like in the past, you may have had to do a little bit more work, but now it's almost like whoop, something happens, even cellularly, um, uh, that takes place for that healing. But the other piece, I think maybe, worth mentioning. I don't like that word "worth." I can't get away from saying that, but that might be good to throw in the mix is this idea of aren't we all one? We're all one. We're all going, or things are happening, and so we don't have to worry about protecting our kids, or who we take them to, or what we, and it's like in this stage of us moving out of the 3D, it's like eventually all the distortions are going to be healed. I mean, that's what it was shown from Sammie, and that's what the human is for, and that's what the continued genetic upgrades and the evolution of the human body is to do, is to alchemize all the distortions, which could take, I don't know, hundreds of millions of years, I don't know. But from this vantage point where we are now, we are still dealing with beings who are with very fractured consciousness, and they can spew the same words of oneness and talk like we're all talking the same language, but energetically they're not, and this is the confounding piece that we're trying to move through. We're all using the same words, right? Connected to source, connected to God. But if some of these vast beings that we say, like, that have portrayed themselves to be God, quote God, and they may be, at some point they were, but somewhere along the line, let's say they took that free will and they, ran off with it in a different direction. They may have a different idea of what God they're talking to. Unfortunately, I don't. But that's my feeling, that we think we're all talking to the same God, but we're not. Because some of these beings are so vast that you don't know that they're not, quote, the original.
Yeah,
source.
shapeshifters, mimics, all kinds of things. Gosh, we could go on this topic forever.
I know.
But we are past our time. And so
Yeah.
I just want to, honor everybody's time. And thank you so much for your writing questions. I encourage you each to come back next time and asking the questions openly here is encouraged as well. There is something about the cadence of your voice that opens up new possibilities and offers an opportunity to see beyond the written form. We can see beyond the written form, but sometimes it's really nice to hear the cadence and see the colors of your voice too. So I appreciate everybody being here. I hope to see you again when we come
Yeah.
through. Susan, I'm so glad we did this, and I'm looking forward to our next Q&A.
Yeah. 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 And Sabine says, thank you. Thank you, Sabine, for following our work and for being here. And
Thank you,
I know,
Sabine.
yeah. And Kiana, she doesn't mind me mentioning her name. Yeah.
All right. Thank you,
Take
everybody.
care, everybody.
Have a wonderful rest of your week.